This fall, besides doing an album with Mitch, we're also going to do another Ragamuffin album. And this one is just going to be 10 songs about Jesus.
Welcome to a Ragamuffin Archive Revisited special presentation celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Jesus Record. I'm Joe Cook. Every week on this program, we dive deep into our archives and beyond to bring you some of the best rare recordings of Rich Mullins and a Ragamuffin Band, as well as other artists who worked with them or were influenced by them. Tonight, we'll be taking an in-depth look at the Jesus Record, which was released 25 years ago this week, on July 21st, 1998. To many of his friends and fans, the Jesus Record is considered Rich's best work, a heartfelt collection of deeply personal songs that reflect on the beauty and complexity of Jesus Christ. And yet Rich Mullins died before he was ever able to record the album. But thankfully, the project continued on. And under the helm of producer Rick Elias, the record was recorded by Rich's band, the Ragamuffins, with some help from friends like Amy Grant, Michael W. Smith, Ashley Cleveland, and Phil Keaggy. For the next 2 hours, we'll be featuring live performances of all the songs from the Jesus Record, performances from a Ragamuffin Band, as well as all the original guest artists. And we're also going to be featuring a never-before-heard interview that Chris Marchand and I taped with Ragamuffin Band bass player Mark Robertson back in 2017. But we're going to begin tonight with a couple performances from the only event that all of the Jesus Record artists ever appeared at together. From April 23rd, 1998, 3 months before the Jesus Record was released, here's Amy, Smitty, Ashley, and Phil, along with a Ragamuffin Band, paying tribute to Rich Mullins at the 29th Annual GMA Dove Awards.
Rich Mullins was the uneasy conscience of Christian music, and when he was killed in a car accident on September 19th, everyone who loved Christian music felt the loss. Memorial services were held all across America. Although Rich was a successful artist, he didn't live like a star. He had taken a vow of poverty so that what he earned could be used to help others. He wrote from a deep well of integrity, and he was utterly committed to the truth. Now that Rich Mullins is gone, now that he's written his last song, his words have become even more precious to us. Here to perform one of my favorites is Myrrh recording artist and Dove Award winner, Phil Keaggy.
Sometimes my life just don't make sense at all. When the mountains look so big and my faith just seems so small. Only Jesus, 'cause I'm shaking like a leaf. You have been King of my glory. Won't you be my Prince of Peace? I'm singing, hold me, Jesus, 'cause I'm shaking like a leaf. You have been King of my glory. Won't you be my Prince of Peace?
More than vulnerability in Rich's writing, there was power too. I See You is his anthem to God's magnificence. Please join me, Ashley Cleveland, Michael W. Smith, and Rich's band, the Ragamuffins, in this powerful song.
Lord, you're leading me with that cloud by day, and then in the night, at the door of a burning flame. but your words are lies. And every day after all, everywhere I go, I see you. 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 Everywhere I go, I see you.
A Ragamuffin Band and friends paying tribute to Rich Mullins at the 29th Annual Dove Awards back in April of 1998. And I'm Joe Cook. Welcome to this special edition of Ragamuffin Archive Revisited. Tonight we're celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Jesus record. And you know, I really wanted to do this episode to mark this occasion because, you know, the Jesus record, on top of it being such an important and landmark album in contemporary Christian music and an important part of the legacy of Rich Mullins, well, it's also a very personal record for me. It was my introduction to Rich Mullins. And you know, I've been running Ragamuffin Archive now for over 13 years. I've done podcasts about Rich. I helped produce a Rich Mullins album. I spent several years working out on the Navajo reservation, and obviously Rich Mullins was a big inspiration behind that. But sometimes people are a little surprised to find out that I actually had no idea who Rich Mullins was while he was alive. Prior to 1997, I kind of had no interest in Christian music whatsoever. In fact, my mom used to try to get me to listen to Christian music, and at the time, like, I was just too busy listening to guys like Tom Petty and the Beatles, and you know, I loved all my classic rock stuff, but I just did not care about Christian music. And at one point, my mom tells me she even tried to get me to listen to Brothers Keeper. And honestly, I have no memory of that ever happening, but it's probably true. But around 1997, I did start warming up to CCM a little bit, and by 1998, I had become a full-fledged fan of contemporary Christian music. And so I remember, this was back around the summer of 1998, walking into my local Christian bookstore, the Bible Book Nook in Vineland, New Jersey. And I remember they had this little TV, like a 13-inch television in the music department. And so they would play videos on the TV in there while you were browsing CDs. And on this particular occasion, they happened to be playing Ben Pearson's Homeless Man documentary. And I remember I stopped for a moment and watched for several minutes, and you know, that film, it really just drew me in. And I remember seeing clips in the documentary of Rich Mullins performing live in concert. And, you know, by this point, I had heard of him, but this was the very first time I'd ever actually seen him or heard him speak. And I remember seeing other people interviewed in this film, and, you know, these were people whose lives that he had touched, especially out on the Navajo reservation. And so I wound up buying the Homeless Man video and a copy of the Jesus record. And it is no exaggeration to say that it was a life-changing album for me. I mean, the lyrics in those songs, they just completely cut through me. And honestly, Rich Mullins, through those songs and through what I learned about his life in that video, he really began to change not only the way I looked at Jesus Christ, but also how I approached my own faith. I mean, this was the first time that I'd ever heard about a Christian celebrity who actually gave all his money away and who moved out to one of the poorest parts of the country to live among some of the poorest and most forgotten people. And at 17 years old, it blew my mind. I mean, Rich Mullins just had this very profound effect on my young life and on my faith. And so as I was experiencing all of this going on inside me, the soundtrack that was playing was the Jesus record. And I know a lot of people love the demos. I mean, I love the demos too. And I know that there are Rich Mullins fans who only listen to the demos. And I've had people tell me that they've never even listened to the album because they only listen to the demos because that's Rich Mullins. But I have to say, I'm a fan of the Jesus record. The demos are great, and I'm so thankful that they included them because I do think they provide so much necessary context for the album. But sometimes it really breaks my heart when people sort of disregard the record, because I feel like in some ways that misses so much of the point of the Jesus record. Before he even died, Rich Mullins picked Rick Elias to produce this album. His original intention was to get the other band members to do the singing on the album, which of course they didn't want to do, but Rich Mullins envisioned this not a Rich Mullins album, but a Ragamuffin Band album. And then suddenly, Rich was gone. His fans, they were left grieving. And his band, Rick Elias, Jimmy Abegg, Aaron Smith, and Mark Robertson, well, those guys, they were given the unthinkable task of actually having to carry on without him and singing his songs night after night, barely able to grieve for themselves and carrying the burden of keeping his legacy alive before anyone else was ever asked to do it. I mean, think about it. This is 15 years before anyone had thought about making a Rich Mullins movie. There were no social media groups. Mitch McVicker hadn't even fully recovered from the accident yet. And yet Jimmy, Aaron, Mark, and Rick, they had to fight through the pain of their loss to go into the studio to make their friend and brother Rich Mullins' final album. So to me, the Jesus record is so much more than just an album. It's a beautiful picture of friendship, brotherhood, grief, loss, pain, and healing. And that album brought a lot of healing to a lot of people who were grieving. And when you're dealing with all of that, I don't think the subject matter of the record could be any more appropriate than it is. 10 songs about Jesus. So tonight, I thought we'd listen to the Jesus record together, but in a slightly different way. We're going to hear the Ragamuffins playing all of these songs live, in concert and on different television and radio appearances, and with all of the original guest artists, Amy Grant, Michael W. Smith, Ashley Cleveland, and Phil Keaggy. And throughout the show, we're going to feature an interview that Chris Marchand and I taped with Ragamuffin Mark Robertson nearly 6 years ago, back in 2017. At the time, we had invited him onto our podcast Between the Songs to discuss his then new project, an album he had released with his band Prayer Flags. And so we released part of it on our podcast, but the full interview, it actually lasted for nearly 3 hours long. And until now, much of it has never been heard before. And we got to talk with Mark about his final weeks and months with Rich Mullins, the effect Rich's death had on him and the band, and we spoke to him about the Jesus record. But please, bear in mind, when we recorded this interview, Mark was in Tennessee, I was in New Mexico, and Chris was in Illinois. And at the time, we didn't have Zoom to record with, so the quality of the audio is less than stellar. But the conversation itself is well worth listening to, and I really think that you're going to be moved by Mark's stories and reflections. So we'll be sharing that throughout the show. But right now, we're going to dive into the Jesus record with the opening track, and arguably the most iconic song from the album, My Deliverer. So here's a performance of the song by a Ragamuffin Band, recorded in South Bend, Indiana on November 9th, 1998, during the Homeless Man Tour, and this was broadcast on LeSea Broadcasting's television program Live from Studio B. Here is My Deliverer.
Joseph took his wife and her child, and they went to Africa to escape the rage of a deadly king. There along the banks of the Nile, Jesus listened to the song that the captive children used to sing. They were singing, my deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. Help us out. My deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. Through a dry and thirsty land, water from the Kenyan heights pours itself out of Lake Sangra's broken heart. There in the Sahara wind, Jesus heard the whole world cry for the healing that would flow from his own scars. Everyone, the world was singing, my deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. My deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. He will never break his promise, he has written it upon the sky. My deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. My deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. My deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. Doubt his promise, though I doubt my heart, I doubt my eyes. My deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. Oh, deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. My deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. He will never break his promise, though the stars should break faith with the sky. My deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. My deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. My deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. My deliverer is coming, my deliverer is standing by. standing by. My deliverer is coming. My deliverer is standing by.
We've been talking a lot about kind of that last year, and by 1997, it seemed like Rich was kind of moving like a freight train. We've met a couple times over the years, and I remember after a Ragamuffin show one time, you said something to me I never forgot. You said it was like the way Rich was talking at his concerts during that last year. You said it was almost like, even though he obviously didn't, it was like he knew he was going to die. What did you mean by that?
He just talked a lot about death. He talked a lot about going to the other side. And it was very much a theme, you know, of, do you remember that story he told about the sweater? Do you remember that story?
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's about when you get washed up on the other side and Jesus recognizes you because of the sweater. You know, that weird story he told. Well, that's about dying. He actually told me his preferred way of dying on that tour. He said, I don't want to get old and just nod off one day. He's like, I want to be like in a hot air balloon that's on fire over the Grand Canyon. I want it to be big. I want my last few seconds to be exciting. And well, you know, he got that. The way he died was certainly not boring. I don't think anyone would choose that, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He said given if he had anything to say about it, he'd rather die in a way that's kind of exciting and big and fiery and quick rather than dragging it out and things like that. But he just talked about it a lot. And so when he died, it was like, I was one of the first things I said. I'm like, he knew. And now, I don't know that he knew, but gosh, it sure seemed like it. He even looked terrible the last couple of weeks he was alive. He was only 41 years old, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is? I was curious about that myself. It really comes through in some of the videos.
He acted like he had the weight of the world on his shoulders at the time. And he had a very big plan coming up. Like, we were about to make the Jesus record. Like, it was supposed to be a week later, we were going to start tracking. After the accident, we were all heading down to, packing our bags and getting ready to head down to Nashville. I was still living in Chicago at the time. I can't remember where we were going to do it and who was engineering. Rick was going to produce. That was already situated. I mean, I was part of that conversation. Like, no more of this group hug production, man. Somebody's got to steer the ship, and I think Rick is the guy to do it. And Rick has a great technical sense. He has a great musical sense. He was the man for the job. But then Rich, he had conditions that we did a mutiny on this, but Rich said, here's what I want to do. He wanted to retire and teach in Window Rock. But he had a lot of actually resistance from people there on that he wasn't a fundamentalist is what his simple answer was. Yet he still continued to buy and stockpile instruments for this music school. You know, we'd be out on the road and he'd find a good deal on some cello or some percussion or this or that, ocarinas or whatever. And he was saving them up for the school. He still was doing his bit. But he kind of went like, he said he came to the realization that wasn't how he could be most effective. He's like, I know I'm able to raise large sums of money. So I'm going to raise large sums of money. And we're gonna think up more and more projects to do. And he only wanted so much influence on the reservation. He felt like no way should there be a white pastor. It should all come from the natives. You know what I mean? If we're on the Navajo res, we just want to help the Navajo, equip them to do what they do. He didn't feel like that was his place in the end. He was like, I want to help them. I don't want to be the guy. So his plan was, he goes, I want to do a Ragamuffin Band record that I don't sing on. I'll just play keyboards. You guys all sing your own songs. And then I'm going to go back with Reed Arvin and make a big praise and worship record. And we'll do a tour where we do both records. Then you guys sing a bunch, I'll sing a bunch, and we'll do a whole tour like that. And we kind of formed a mutiny, and we're like, no way, man. We'll help write the Jesus record, but you're the singer. Nobody wants to hear us sing. He's like, well, we'll see when we get there, but that's what I prefer to do. And it's like, but I think we had talked him into it because he demoed my tune, Surely God Is With Us. Me and Beaker wrote, and the reason he demoed it is because there's a couple kind of iffy lines in there, and he said, this will never be a single, and if I tell him you wrote it, I don't think it's going to be on the record because that whores line or whatever. I'm like, well, I got that out of the Bible. I don't know. He said, well, if you want it to be successful, you're going to have to change that line. I'm like, fine, you change it because that's what I meant. And then in the end, he went like, you know what? I agree with you. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pitch it as though I wrote it. It's a brand new record deal. They're going to go for anything I give them. And then I'll tell them afterwards. I'll tell them it's your song after it's already done. He goes, but I'll just kind of fake them out for now. And that's what he did. So he demoed that. And, the only one he wouldn't refuse to sing was Man of No Reputation because that was his favorite song. And it always was. He made Rick sing that every Ragamuffin Band concert we ever did. And he was always side stage watching. He didn't slip out to have a smoke or something. He stayed there and watched Rick, and he teared up every single time he heard that song. So that was the one song we knew was absolutely had to be on the record. Then after that, we just went that plus whatever Rich demoed, and that's all. So anyway.
I wanted to ask you about Surely God Is With Us, because it always interested me that Beaker's only contribution to the Jesus record wasn't a co-write with Rich, but with you. How did that come about?
I asked Beaker. I can't remember. I think he was living in Atlanta at the time, and he was out of the band. But him and Rich were still close. Or maybe he wasn't out of the band, but I think he was. And he was kind of wanting to do other things. And I just but he still wanted to write. So I said, well, you want to write a couple tunes? And he had this little office it really is, his writing office is what the rest of the world would use to put their lawnmowers in. It's like in the back of his property, just a little tool shed. But he kind of made a little makeshift writing office back there. And it was a slow, brutal process. Beaker doesn't do anything in a rush. You basically just sit and stare at each other for hours. And he goes, what if a dog comes? He'll say it would be something like, what are you talking about? But a song comes out of it eventually. I had most of that tune written. But I think I'm good at the title, because I think if you got a great title, the song will write itself. And sometimes it actually does. But I didn't have a second verse, I think, or something. And so we wrote the second verse together. And then this comes back to Rich's weird death obsession. I had a song called The Longest Goodbye that was on the Mimes of the Old West record. It's the last song. And it was kind of about, I wanted this sort of, almost like The Great Divorce, this spacey, somehow you pass to the other side, but it's not very clear cut. But it was kind of about, passing out of this life. So I had the title and the chorus, and Beaker helped me patch together the rest of it. Which is really, by the way, is the hardest part. Once you got a title and a chorus, you're home free. But the other stuff is really hard. That's where the hard work comes in. Anybody can get inspired for a cool idea. But the nuts and bolts of finishing a song, that's actual work. It's less about inspiration at that point. It's more about hard work. Keeping it in context, making sure rhythmically it works and all those things. Does it say what you're wanting to say? Does it expand on the idea? And Beaker was really good about that stuff.
Who's that man? Thinks he's a prophet. Well, I wonder if he's got something up his sleeve. Where's he from? Who is his daddy? There's rumors he even thinks himself a king of a kingdom of paupers, simpletons and rogues. The whores all seem to love him, and the drunks propose a toast, and they say, surely God is with us. Surely God is with us. They say, surely God is with us today. Who's that man? Says he's a preacher. Well, he must be. He's disturbing all our peace. Where's he get off? What is he hiding? And every word he says, those fools believe. Who could move a mountain? Who would love their enemy? Who could rejoice in pain and turn the other cheek and still say, surely God is with us? Well, surely God is with us. Who'll say, surely God is with us today? Today they say, surely God is with us. Surely God is with us. They say, surely God is with us. Blessed are the poor in spirit, heaven belongs to them. Blessed are those who make peace, they are God's children. I'm the bread of life, I'm the way. You hear that man? Believe what he says. Tell me, who's that man? They made him a prisoner. They tortured him and nailed him to a tree. Was he so bad? Who did he threaten? Did he deserve to die between two thieves? We'll see the scars and touch his wounds. He's risen flesh and bone. And now the sinners have become the saints, and the lost have all come home. And they say, surely God is with us. Surely God is with us. Surely God is with us. They say, surely God is with us today. Today they say, surely God is with us. Well, surely God is with us. They say, surely God is with us today. Hey, yeah.
Thanks. With another performance from Live from Studio B, that was a Ragamuffin Band with the first of two songs from the Jesus record that was not written by Rich Mullins. That was one penned by Mark Robertson and Beaker called Surely God is With Us. And, you know, I can't tell you how many times over the years I've seen somebody on social media comment saying, man, that is my favorite Rich Mullins song ever. And I always get a kick out of responding and telling them, well, you know, Rich didn't actually write that one. But anyway, we're going to hear more from our interview with Mark Robertson in a few minutes. But next up from the Jesus record is the song Nothing Is Beyond You, written by Rich Mullins, Mitch McVicker, and Tom Booth, and featuring Amy Grant on lead vocals. And so back in 2019, when Rick Elias was battling cancer, the Ragamuffins held a benefit concert for him with the full band reuniting on stage for one night only, with Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith with them to perform the Jesus record in its entirety for the first time ever. And so I was really, really fortunate to attend that night, and I was so thrilled to see Amy perform this song. And afterwards, my friend Dave Trout at UTR Media, he asked me to write a review of that concert. And so here's what I wrote about Amy's performance that night. Easily the most famous person in the room, you'd have never known it. "I'm Amy," she said, very casually. The crowd laughed, knowing full well who she was. She continued, "You can think you know a song until you have to sing it. You could have even recorded the song 21 years ago, but you haven't actually performed it in 21 years, and you think you remember it until you try and sing it. I wept this morning rehearsing this song, so glad that Rich Mullins wrote these lyrics, and whatever experience had drove him to this kind of wisdom. Full disclosure, that song, Nothing Is Beyond You, is my favorite song recorded for the Jesus record. It has always seemed to me as though Rich Mullins wrote that song with Amy Grant's distinctive voice in mind, even if, in reality, he hadn't. I don't believe Rich could have performed it any better than Amy did on that album. For 21 years, I have waited to hear her sing that song live, and now, for the first time ever, I had the opportunity to see her perform it. And it was very different than I ever could have expected. Amy struggled her way through the entire song, and it was a truly wonderful thing to behold. There on stage was one of the most famous singers in the world, singing an incredible song that she helped make famous. And in her hands, she held tightly onto the lyric sheet. There were moments throughout the song when she got completely lost, and it was obvious that the high notes were not nearly as easy for her to hit as they were 21 years ago. I have to tell you, despite the imperfections, it was an absolutely beautiful performance. This was a night where friends were coming together to support another friend and celebrate the music they created together. It felt as though they were just gathering around a piano at a family reunion. From the Jesus Record live benefit for Rick Elias from February 2nd, 2019, here's Amy Grant's only ever live performance of Nothing Is Beyond You.
Even then, you would see my heart.
studio with you for those last few weeks when you started working on Mitch's first album. I know you were with Rich pretty much every day for the last few weeks he was here.
Yeah.
Anything stand out from that time, just in the studio with him?
Yeah, kind of. There was still a lot of the Kid Brothers around from the tour, and a lot of them played on the record. But we flew in a couple ringers, Kenny Greenberg and stuff like that. And the record wasn't quite done. I had a few things to do. Rich's piano parts were on a MIDI kind of file, and I was going to use a different MIDI source later, but he just played on a kind of a cruddy sounding electronic piano. But I was going to transfer the MIDI later. That was a nightmare, and I did it way after he died. It was heartbreaking because I'm looking at these little MIDI notes. That's Rich's fingers. You know what I'm saying? That was just, I barely made it through it. But the getting that, we were supposed to finish on this one day. We weren't quite finished, but the rest was kind of up to me. It was just leg production crap. But Mitch got sick that day. So there was one song he couldn't finish, and we labored over it all day, and he didn't finish it. And I had to kind of trick him into finishing it like a year later, or 6 months later, or whatever it was. But anyway, when we were making it, it was all the Kid Brothers, and my landlord was at the offices I was at. There was a couple small churches there, and the churches were complaining about the Kid Brothers because they would just do things like, because these spaces were all kind of interconnected. There's like these small office buildings, but there was a Black Holiness church downstairs. There's this Puerto Rican church upstairs. Meanwhile, you got the Kid Brothers like streaking through the hallways and throwing food at each other and, just being kids. And the funniest thing about that, so the last day of recording, we take a quick break for some coffee, and me and Rich go for a walk. It was a gloriously nice day. So we're taking a walk, and he said, I got to tell you, I'm glad I did this thing with the Kid Brothers, but I am so sick of being with young guys right now. Because it's all about pantsing each other and, throwing food. And it's just, because I cannot wait to get back on the road with the Rags, where it's adults who can actually play, and I don't have to show them every little thing. And I just want to have the band again and grown men. Yeah, man, I can see that. It's kind of wearing me out too. But, so he says this. Then after he says this, he becomes more childish than I'd ever seen him act in his life. So I don't get that part to this day. But so he does a thing. Our overdub room is really just like a storage closet. So it's, you close the door so you have some separation. Rich is going in to do a backup vocal on Mitch's record. And he said, the door is closed. He's just talking through the mic. He goes, "Do you guys get a picture of me cutting this vocal? Maybe it'd be cool for the album." I'm like, yeah, man. So we opened the door and got a camera ready. Rich is buck naked, head to toe. And so Mike, the drummer, Mike Aquifer, he takes the picture. And the only thing Rich said was like, he said, "Okay, close the door. Close the door." And then he says over the mic, he goes, "Is my butt still tan?" Because he had been hiking out in Window Rock naked, apparently. And he wanted to know if his rear end was still tan. And it was. But then, and this is moments after him criticizing how immature everybody has been. Then he comes out of the overdub room, still with not a stitch on. And he said, I was thinking, Jordan, who was engineering, the guitar player from this train, he's not a touchy-feely person. He's just like, if you went to hug him or something, you could feel him tense up. He was just not good with that. So Rich decides the best thing for Jordan to get over that is to be hugged by a naked man. And he just attacks Jordan and forces him to hug him. And Jordan's just wanting to blow his brains out. And it's extremely funny. Then Rich winds up going streaking up and down the hall. So after saying he was so sick of all these kids, I think he was getting his last day in with them. You know what I'm saying? And he just did the most childish, goofy stuff. And and we had a blast. So that was our last day recording. And he died that night.
That was his last day on Earth.
That was his last day on Earth.
You want me to ask? I have no question. What possible response do I have to that? Oh, here's what I'll ask you. So it's often said of Mullins, he's more saint-like than you or I, and he's also more of a sinner than you or I. What do you make of that? Is that an exaggeration? Is that true to life?
That's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I don't think I could add to that if I wanted to. I heard somebody once say, he's just like everybody else, only more.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good one, I think. I used to just say he was an interesting bunch of guys. But that's all true. His spiritual side seemed way deeper, and his crass human side was way more honest than most Christians would be.
Oh, you did not have a home. There were places you visited frequently and took off your shoes and you scratched your feet, cause you knew that the whole world belonged to the meek, but you did not have a home. No, you did not have a home. And you did not take a wife.
There were pretty maids all in a row who lined up to touch the hem of your robe,
but you had no place to take them, so you did not take a wife. No, you did not take a wife. Birds have nests,
foxes have dens. Oh, for the whole world rests on the shoulders of a homeless man.
You had the shoulders of a homeless man. And you did not have a home.
When you had no stones to throw, you did not have an axe to grind, not a party line, blinded to the blind. You had no stones to throw. You had no stones to throw.
And you rode an ass's foal
to spread the coats and cut down ponds for you and your donkey to walk upon, but the world won't find what it thinks it wants on the back of an ass's foal.
So I guess you had to get sold,
cause the world can't stand what it can't own, and it can't own you, cause you did not have a birds have nests,
foxes have dens,
but the hope of a whole will rest on the shoulders of a homeless man.
You had the shoulders of a homeless man.
And you did not have a birds have nests,
foxes have dens, but the hope of the whole world rests on the shoulders of a homeless man.
You had the shoulders of a homeless man. And the world can't stand what it can't own, and it can't own you, cause you did not have a home.
You Did Not Have a Home, live in Nashville, Tennessee, back on September 13th, 2002, and that was from a tribute concert at the Lighthouse Coffee House, hosted by legendary Christian radio DJ Brian Mason, and that concert featured performances from Ragamuffin Band members Rick Elias, Jimmy Abegg, and Mark Robertson, along with Mitch McVicker, Ashley Cleveland, Phil Keaggy, and on percussion from the band This Train, Cobra Joe. And we're going to play another performance from that concert right now, this one featuring Ashley Cleveland, who, of course, famously recorded the song Jesus on the Jesus record, and she absolutely knocked that one out of the park. In fact, over the years, I've seen a lot of comments from a lot of people, even folks who say they prefer the demos, who have to admit that Ashley Cleveland gave an amazing performance of that song. And so let's go back to the Lighthouse Coffee House back in 2002, and here's Ashley to introduce the song.
Beth Lutz wrote me the nicest letter after I did the song, telling me that Rich had actually written this song when he was in college. And that was really surprising to me because, you know, I'm a songwriter, and I can tell you that good songs are hard to come by. Great ones are really, talk about tricky. And this was a great song, and it was kind of surprising to me that he would leave a great song laying around and not record it. And but Beth said in her letter, she said, you know, I really think that he never really saw this as a song for himself. I think he, all along, he sort of had been waiting for you to come and do it, except he expected you to be black. Jesus, they say you walked on the water once, when you lived as all men do. Please teach me how to walk the way you did. I want to walk with you. Oh, Jesus, say you taught a lame man how to dance when he had never stood without a crutch. Here am I, Lord, holding out my withered hand, and I'm just waiting to be touched. Jesus, write me into your story. Whisper it to me and let me know I'm yours. Jesus, they say you spoke and calmed an angry wave that was tossed across a stone. Listen on how to obey. 'Cause there's a storm inside of me. Jesus, write me into your story. Whisper a stone to seal your grave. Feels like the devil's rolled a stone onto my heart. Can you roll that stone away?
How did you hear the news that Rich had been killed?
I had, this is pretty much pre-cell phone for most people this time in 97. Let's see. I was kind of getting mad. We were supposed to only do a half day in the studio. Mitch was going to finish one vocal and we were done. But it just never worked that way with the Kid Brothers guys. And I had scheduled to leave town at about 3 in the afternoon. And I had been dating a girl who lived in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. So we were going to meet somewhere in like Ohio just to hang out for the weekend and go do some stuff. And I had booked a hotel for myself and all that, and to meet up so that we could have some kind of the long distance thing was hard. And I'm kind of like trying to figure out how to tell Rich without being a jerk. I'm like, I kind of got a date this weekend, I want to see the girl I'm seeing, all that stuff. And he's like, yeah, we just got to finish this. And the next thing, we don't wrap up till 9 at night. And we were supposed to wrap up at noon. And so I was actually kind of irritated by that point. But it was such fun work, and that I was kind of into it, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm happy about this. I go like, okay, dude, I've got to split now. I'll be back on Monday. I'll get all this stuff buttoned up next week, and then the week after we're doing the start of the Jesus record. So I gave him a hug. I told him I loved him, which I'm glad I got to do. And he's like, and he just said, all right, well, you be good this weekend. And he kind of gave me a look like, like he was doubtful of my ability to be good. And then, but that's what it was kind of, he even said, but he used to say it to a lot of people, but he's like, but if you can't do that, just be God's. And like, you got it, man. See you later. And I just hauled the mail out of there. It was a horrible rainstorm, really thick. And I was actually terrified on this whole trip because I had to drive like 6-7 hours for my weekend. And I can't explain this one. I don't know if it's like got a spiritual quality to it or not. But I got to where I was going, called the girl. She's got there too. And I said, before we were going to hang out, though it was late at night, we're going to hang out at least a little while and then get up the next day and go do some stuff. But I think, man, I got a lot coming up. I better check my voicemail real quick first, if you don't mind. So I call my voicemail at home, and I'm not exaggerating. It's one of those things where, a day goes by, how many voicemails you get? 2, 4, whatever it is. I think the little robot said you have 50 some odd messages. I can't remember. It was just a crazy amount of messages. And all the messages went like this, the first 10 or 12. It went like, hey man, just wanted to tell you I'm really sorry. Call me if you need anything. And that's all they would say. Click. And it's like, man, I just heard the news. I don't even know what to say. People are just saying stuff like that. They're clearly something huge happened. You could hear it in their voices, people crying, trembling. But no one said what happened. For quite a few of them, it got like 15 deep, and I still don't know what they're all sad about. So another friend finally, after a few deep, goes, hey man, you got to call me as soon as possible, no matter what time. And I called this friend, and she said, she told me what had happened. So I called the girl I was seeing. I said, hey, I don't know how to say this, but I got to leave. I got to go back. I'll tell you about it. And I just got back in my car and drove home. And barely drive, It's like I didn't even know. You know how when something like that first happens, you don't even know how to. It's that shock. It's like, wait, what? No. Then you're looking for how it's not true. You're looking for any kind of like, no, that didn't happen. Somebody looked like him, or it was. Surely they haven't confirmed this yet. And I stopped and I listened to the rest of my voicemail somewhere when I stopped to get gas, and it was definitely true. And it was all manner of things. In some cases, it'd be really sweet people that are dear to you, and they'll say nice things. And then in some cases, it was fans going like, "Hey man, I just heard. Is there any way you can get me on the list to get into the funeral? Because I heard it's for family only and friends, or you have to be invited. Like, can you get me on? Is there some sort of list you can get me on?" I had a bunch of those in a row, and it was all a manner of things. It's like people are just. They're not bad people. They just are that clueless, and what? I'm still wrapping my head around the idea that there is a funeral, much less, But that's the next thing we know. That's my next couple of days. I got to go down to Indiana and speak at his funeral, and I got to go. Somehow, somebody in Wichita wanted us to do something, a big memorial service, and they wanted us to speak and be there. But it was like the next day, and we're in Indiana, how we get to Wichita tomorrow? And Michael W. Smith, at the time, he was touring a lot still, and he had a private jet. And so Smitty called us up and was like, "Hey man, I heard you guys are wanted in Wichita, let's go." They asked me to, so I'm going to go anyway. Well, let's just take my plane. And he throws us on a plane, which I've never, I've been on 2 private planes in my life. It's if you've never done it, I highly recommend it. But you get it takes like 2 hours to get to Wichita from, what I mean? It's like, it was crazy. Anyway, it's just this whirlwind of memorials and what the heck just happened. And none of us could wrap our heads around it. And we're supposed to get started. The label still, and his family asked us to keep going with the record as planned. We wound up asked them if we could have a break because we just couldn't even do it. We're trying to get together in a room and hash out the songs, and nobody could keep it together. You know what I mean? It's like you have to have at some point you got to stop crying and learn the chords. And who's going to sing this song? And you got to make all those kind of grown-up decisions about it, and none of us were in a position to pull that off. We couldn't stop blubbering and go. It's like such a dream state for a couple of months where you just couldn't even figure it out. How you're supposed to even feel about this. And now we're making his record, which is why we kind of insisted on leaving his demos as a part of the record.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have to guess what he wanted the record to even be. You know what I mean? It's like Rick had talked to Rich a lot. They had a lot of meetings about, well, they were going to use some strings and go really big on a couple tunes and this and that. And boy, they sure did. Rick pulled out the stops on that. Mm-hmm. But anyway, that's kind of how it all wrapped up.
We didn't know what love was till he came, and he gave love a face and he gave love a name. Gave love away like the sky gave the rain and sun. We were looking for heroes, he came looking for the lost. We were searching for glory and he showed us a cross. Now we know what love is, 'cause he loved us. All the way to kingdom come, all the way to kingdom come. Love is a miracle. It's a miracle if you can find it. And miracles are hard to come by these days. But the sweet Lord Jesus, he's a miracle man. He's got holes in his feet and his side and his hands. And if you ask for love, love pours through them like a ray of light, like a raging blaze. We didn't know what love was till he came. And he gave love a face and he gave love a name. And and he gave love away like the sky gives the rain and sun. We were looking for heroes, he came looking for the lost. We were searching for glory and he showed us the cross. Now we know what love is, 'cause he loves us. All the way to kingdom come, all the way to kingdom come. Life is a mystery, it's a mystery we're all living. And this world is so fragile, so frail, so frail. Yeah, with the sweet Lord Jesus, his mysterious heart keeps the lifeblood pumping at the center of it all. If we let go of us, we'd all blow apart. He holds on tight, his love don't fail. We'll love him until he came. And he gave love a face, and he gave love a name, and he gave love away like the sky gives the rain and the sun. Yeah, we were looking for heroes, looking for the lost. We were looking for glory and he gave us the cross. Now we know what love is, 'cause he loves us. All the way to kingdom come, all the way to kingdom come.
Now that's a professional. He has no business on this stage.
This is the end of your career.
You'll never work in Brentwood again.
Well, that was another live performance from the 2002 Lighthouse Coffee House tribute concert. Phil Keaggy and friends performing the very last song that Rich Mullins ever wrote, All the Way to Kingdom Come, which of course Phil famously recorded with the Ragamuffins on the Jesus record. And you know what you just heard right there? Well, that was the only time that Phil has ever played that song live. And in fact, it's the only time he ever sang the verses, since he only sang the chorus on the album. And you know, it's really interesting to note that during the concert that night, Phil Keaggy was really under the weather, like very sick. But he felt bad canceling out on such short notice, and so he wound up fighting his way through the entire concert. The show must go on. Anyway, right now, we're going to play the second of two songs from the Jesus record that was not written by Rich Mullins. And this is one that really went on to become Rick Elias's signature song. And of course, I'm talking about Man of No Reputation. And this is a song that Rich Mullins really loved. In fact, he once called it his favorite contemporary gospel song. So right now we're going to play a live performance of the song from a Ragamuffin Band that was taped on Brian Mason's radio show back on March 28th, 2010. And at the time, the band, Mark, Jimmy, Rick, and Aaron, had just reunited, now with Ben Pearson on guitar, and they were planning that week to do their first concert together in years. And so early that Sunday morning, 4 of the band members, Rick, Jimmy, Mark, and Ben, appeared on Brian's radio show to promote the concert, and during the interview, they played a beautiful rendition of Man of No Reputation. Let's take a listen.
A Ragamuffin Band in the studio with us. Jimmy Abeg is with us. This is neat. Oh, mandolin. Cool. All right. Well, this is Nashville, isn't it? Rick Elias as well. That's good. Yes, Mark Robertson on bass. Hit that. Let's see how you're going to blow everybody out here. That's not bad. Okay. If you see me do this.
Absolutely.
And
I get that a lot.
And Ben. It was a thumbs down I was giving him. No, you don't either. And Ben Pearson. Ben. That's neat. Now, is it everybody singing? Nope, it's just
one.
Okay. Ben, I want you to move back then so we get guitar. Okay. We get guitar real good.
Right. Yeah, here,
Yep. Squeak those mics around, all that kind of stuff. Are you going to do Man of No Reputation?
Yeah.
This was a song that was always loved so much. I remember the story. Rich loved this song, and he just refused to record it himself.
He did not. He insisted that I sing it, and we got into a pretty big argument about it, as I recall, when we were at the Hogan. I said, nobody buys your records to hear me sing. Nobody buys my records to hear me sing. So please sing the song. It might actually make me a few bucks if you sing it. But he was a champion of all of our solo work, and he would always kind of parade us out during his concerts. But this was a song, I think, thinking back on it, I just think he had this quote on me one time. He said that I was the smartest thug he'd ever met. And I think there was something about the song that just, I think he was just astounded that someone like me could write a song that was somewhat tender and reflective.
And Rick wouldn't say so, but when Rich did the demos for the Jesus record, like the song I wrote, he didn't tell him it was mine just in case. Just in case they went, no, that's too goofy or whatever. But that was the only song he said was non-negotiable. He wouldn't discuss. He would talk about any other song, we could change it or get rid of it and write another one, but except this one.
So even if Rich had recorded the Jesus record as had been the plan,
he wouldn't have sang it.
This would have been, and so you would have had the distinction, as you do. Well, not actually, I guess now, but you would have had the distinction being the only vocalist on a Rich Mullins album.
I guess so. Although I was determined not to let up on him on that. I was determined that he was going to sing it.
You were going to get him to do a scratch vocal and just keep it.
And then just keep it. Yeah.
Well, I remember the first time I heard this song. I think you did it live on this program one time, and it just blew me away. I mean, it's such an incredibly powerful song, and you just kind of wonder, where does a song like that come from?
I'm very proud of how humble I am about having written this song.
Well done.
Oh, boy.
All right, A Man of No Reputation, a Ragamuffin Band, folks, on Mix 92.9.
It was said this man was of no reputation, yet he could stop a rising stone with a gesture of his hands. But he chose to use his hands to heal hearts of darkness, hearts of stone, just like mine, would be revealed. He was a man of no reputation, and by the wise considered a fool, when he spoke about faith and forgiveness in a time when the strongest arms rule. But this man of no reputation loved the weak with relentless affection, and he loved all those poor in spirit just as they were. He was a man of no reputation. It was said this man brought only confusion, that he'd achieve his ends by any means, and the truth would bring revolution, and for once they were right. The truth
set us free. The hearts of the captive were his only concern, and the powerful knew their days were ending. He was a man of no reputation, and by the wise considered a fool. When he spoke about faith and forgiveness in a time when the strongest arms ruled. But this man of no reputation loved the weak with relentless affection, and he loved all those poor in spirit just as they were. He was a man of no reputation. One day soon the gates of heaven will open wide, and the Prince of Peace will come back for his bride. But for now we live on these streets, forbidding and tough, where push always comes to shove. And it's said love's never enough, where a prophet in rags gives hope to a fearful world. No injustice, no heart of darkness will keep this voice from being heard. No, he was a man of no reputation, and by the wise considered a fool. When he spoke about faith and forgiveness in a time when the strongest arms rule. But this man of no reputation loves us all with relentless affection, and he loves all us poor in spirit. Come as you are to the man of no reputation.
Talking about the Jesus record for a moment, I mean, I'm assuming that when it first happened, I can't imagine that you guys were thinking that it would continue, but then here you are, you're being asked to do this. There are a lot of guests who are on that album. I mean, were people like just lining up to knock on the door to wanting to be a part of that record, or were those guests particularly selected for that album?
Everyone who's on it asked to be on it, but I mean, everybody asked to be on it. I mean, I don't know how many people wanted to be on that record when they found out we were going to do it. Like, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. But it'd be like, okay, I was about to name names and be a jerk, but I'm not. There's people like, what the heck do you have to do with any of this? You know, be some big pop artist like Rich hated you, or hated your music, But you just want to be on this for the publicity, But there were certain people. Michael W. Smith, him and Rich were friends, and he really helped us to to travel to a couple different locations and get to these memorials because he felt like that was good for people. And, you know, taking a charter jet somewhere is super expensive. You know, all that stuff. He was cool, and he was part of Rich's life. And honestly, artistically, we didn't want Smitty because I didn't. They're very different kinds of singers. So I was originally going to sing whatever tune he did. I think I was originally going to do it. Then we were like, no, we got to have Smitty. It's the right thing to do. We'll just figure out how to make it work. You know, find a song that works for his voice. And Amy was a no-brainer because Rich and Amy were very close, and it was very important to Amy to do her part, and she killed it.
That song sounds like it was written for her.
It really does. It really does. And hats off to Rick because he was the one who kind of, in some cases, somebody come in. I can't remember in Amy's case if she went, I gotta sing that one. That's mine. But in most cases, Rick went, you know, no, this is for, you know, whoever. And I think I was also, you know, we were just tag teaming it, you know, when we were tracking it. And then I was singing All the Way to Kingdom Come. You know, we traded off the verses. Then there's that big chorus. A little high for me. It wasn't the right timbre for Rich. Jimmy couldn't do it. You know, Jimmy's voice, you kind of got to take it for what it is. But, you know what I mean? He has a very character kind of voice. But it's a big old beatly kind of melody, no way. And that's one of us, like, Keaggy, man. Keaggy's got to do it. They were friends. And you know, Keaggy had played on the last This Train record. We're all pals. So, like, yeah, he's got to do it. And he wanted to do it. So yeah, let's get Keaggy. And I do remember being in an overdub room trying to get a headphone mix to sing backup vocals on one of the songs. And I'm like, hey, man, could you turn Smitty down slightly and turn Amy up a little bit on my mix? And Jordan was engineering. I'm like, did you hear what I just said? Like, I'm singing with Michael Smith and Amy Grant on a record. It just cracked me up to no end. And something I never thought I'd do. It wasn't exactly on my bucket list either, but it was, I never thought I'd do it, you know. But we're intermingling with all these characters, you know, who just, it was so important to them.
See the teacher sitting on a mountain, see him walking along the shore. Friends and disciples gathering around him, say never spake a man like this before. But why is a man as wise as he? Gethsemane. Did he know someone never see? See the master walking on the water, hear him speak and call an angry wind. Look at the raising of Jairus' daughter. With the word, Lazarus comes forth from the grave. Why is a man as strong as this being betrayed by a good friend's kiss? Could it be that maybe this man missed? I'm not talking about the pie in the sky that you good boys and girls get in the by and by, but rather the stream, the strictly we define. If we got the guts to try. See the teacher playing with the children.
Well, that was another performance from the Jesus Record live benefit concert for Rick Elias from February of 2019, and the only live performance ever from Michael W. Smith and the Rags doing the song Heaven in His Eyes. And you know, I want to take a moment to thank Trey Stumpf, who recorded both of the songs that we featured from that concert. And I think Trey was actually sitting in the row right in front of me that night, and so I'm pretty sure that that's me that you hear kind of hooting and hollering at the end of those recordings, so my apologies. But I also want to thank Andrew Montanera, because on Trey's recording of that last song, the first few seconds of the intro were missing. But Andrew happened to get his own recording that night, and so I was able to mix those two recordings together, and so you guys got to hear the full performance. Anyway, you're listening to Ragamuffin Archive Revisited and our 25th anniversary celebration of the Jesus Record. And you know, we're going to conclude our interview with Mark Robertson in just a moment. But right now, let's go back to 1998 for another performance from a Ragamuffin Band's appearance on Live from Studio B. And to introduce the song Hard to Get, here's Rick Elias.
I had the opportunity to go out to Window Rock the weekend before Rich died, and to talk to him about the Jesus Record, and I will forever be grateful that I had that opportunity to see him one last time. We sat down in his hogan, and he played us the song we're about to play for you now. And it was the first song I'd heard for quite a while from the record. I'd never heard it before. And I just remember sitting there dumbfounded at the depth of the lyric, the transparency of it, of a song that dealt so openly with abandonment and isolation and doubt and ultimately the hope that we have in Christ in a way that only Rich could do. That song is called Hard to Get.
Hear the prayers of those of us who live on earth, who are afraid of being left by those we love, and who get hardened by the hurt. Do you remember when you lived down here where we all scraped to find the faith to ask for daily bread? Did you forget about us after you had flown away? Well, I memorized every word you said. Still, I'm so scared of holding my breath. You're up there just playing hard to get. You live in radiance. Hear the prayers of those of us who live in skin. We have a love that's not as patient as yours was. Still we do love now and then. Did you ever know loneliness? Did you ever know need? Do you remember just how long the night could get? When you were barely holding on, your friends fall asleep and don't see the blood that's running in your sweat. Will those who mourn be left uncomforted while you're up there just playing hard to get?
could be explained. And I know that I am only lashing out at the one who loves me most. And after I figured this somehow, all I really need to know is if you live in eternity, hear the prayers of those of us who live in time. We can't see what's ahead, and we cannot get free of what we've left behind. I'm reeling from these voices that keep screaming in my ears, all the words of shame and doubt, blame and regret. I can't see how you're leading me unless you've led me here, where I'm lost enough to let myself be led. And so you've been here all along, I guess. It's just your ways, and you are just playing hard to get.
You know, the sound of the Jesus record is night and day. You have these lo-fi, vulnerable tracks with Mullins, and then you have the studio album. And I think if I'm going to like look at Mullins' work, the Jesus record might be the most polished studio album, even in some senses more than the Liturgy album. I guess I'm curious, was the record company looking for that? You know, they knew that you had the big names. Were they, or did Elias just kind of, it's just what he did. He made it that polished.
Like I say, Rick, I don't envy Rick for that task, because he's in full tilt mourning and grief stricken, but he has to put on his big boy pants, you know, and be a record producer. He has to interpret for Rich now because Rich isn't there. All he had to base it on was the talks. Like, Rick and Rich had met with Tom Howard, who did all our string arrangements. And so we knew Tom was going to be involved. So we stuck to that plan. We knew what songs Rich liked that he wanted, that he had a kind of an aesthetic with. That for some of the things, like My Deliverer, he wanted a big liturgy kind of sound. He wanted, you know, blah, blah, blah. So we had a few pieces of the puzzle. But, I mean, gosh, Rick pulled out all the stops. I mean, you know, the strings on My Deliverer, there's 2 full choirs on My Deliverer, and cut in different sessions. And the strings, we flew to London and used half of the London Philharmonic at Abbey Road, you know, where the Beatles made all their records. And we used, you know, an Abbey Road engineer, and it was crazy. I was just, that's pretty epic. But I think it sounds like it. You know, I would have never done it, you know, that way. I would have gone way more earthy. That would have been my instinct. But Rick was trying to take Rich's body of work into consideration. And I think Rick made the right calls. I've had artist friends go like, he went way too slick on that, man. Rich would have never done that. I'm like, well, Rich tried many times. He just wasn't very good at it. You know, Rich wasn't good at keeping things super tight and slick. Rick is a total craftsman. But if you listen to Rick's solo records, they're nothing like that record. He was trying to interpret the best thing to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I said, I don't envy him. Then we were trying to figure out who was going to sing the vocal on That Where I Am, There You May Also Be. And I sang it live. And Rick and I think we tag teamed that vocal, didn't we? Me and Rick. But we had Aaron play along to the original demo so that Rich could be in the song. And it was one of the only ones we could do it on because the demos were literally. I'll never understand this one because Rich didn't demo records. He didn't like to demo records because he didn't want to give the label too much input. He just wanted to hand them a finished product. So he went while we were making Mitch's record. I mean, Rich went to like wherever the nearest by store and he bought a boombox cassette deck that you just hit, and he couldn't figure out how to work that. You know, it's like he wasn't a technical dude. He broke the first couple tapes. I don't even know how he did it. But we finally got him set up, had one of the Kid brothers run the tape for him, and he just played either piano or guitar in this big empty sanctuary. And but the quality of a battery-operated boombox, the tape's not going to roll consistently. It's going to warble. You know what I'm saying? As raw as those demos sound, we actually paid an engineer a lot of money to make them sound that good. You know what I'm saying? So there was no way we could include him on everything. The tapes were just too dodgy. But on That Where I Am, that we did.
Did you put a lot more work into making that song work with Rich? I guess I mean as far as cleaning up the tape.
Yeah, we tried. We didn't add anything. We just tried to EQ as much hiss out as we could and tape warble and straighten out some of that stuff just so it'd be a little more presentable. But yeah, I mean, an engineer spent a whole day trying to kind of make that stuff a little more presentable because it really became important to us. And we insisted to the label if we do it, it has to be a double record. And it had to include, which double records don't happen in Christian music. It had to include the demos, period. And a lot of people only listen to the demos. I get that.
Yeah, Joe and I go back and forth. I'm more of a demos guy, but
an album guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think part of that, though, is if I can give you any insight into that, is Chris was you were a Rich fan, Chris. While you saw him in concert, you met him a couple times. I really didn't know who Rich was until about a year after he died, and so the Jesus record was really my introduction to Rich. So the album itself actually means a lot to me.
That makes sense. If you knew him more, maybe you'd get a little more attached to the demos at the time. I think they're both. I'm glad we did both.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I think if we just released the demos, that would have been kind of a sad place to leave thing because it's so raw. It would have been great for a couple people to help him through the grieving process, but as a real document to his last body of work, I think the record had to be made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just my take on it.
Do you guys remember this one? Yeah. What is it then? Oh, I know. All right.
What is it?
That where
Oh, yeah, where? Okay.
You guys have been very polite so far. It's time to get over that. So, in my Father's house, there are many, many rooms. Yeah, in my Father's house, there are many, many rooms. And I'm going up there now to prepare a place for you, that where I am, there you may also be. If I go prepare a place for you, I will come back again. Yeah, if I go prepare a place for you, I will come back again. And you know I am the way, the truth, the life. Keep my commands. Of where I am, there you may also be. That where I am, there you may also be. Of where the truth will set you free. In the world you will have trouble, but I leave you my peace. That where I am, there you may also be. Remember you did not choose me, no, I have chosen you. Remember you did not choose me, no, I have chosen you. The world will show you hatred, the Spirit show you truth. That where I am, there you may also be. Well, I come down from the Father, time for me to go back up. Yeah, I come down from the Father, time for me to go back up. For one command I leave you,
Love as I have loved, that where I am, there you may also be. That where I am, there you may also be. Up where the truth will set you free. In the world you will have trouble, but I leave you my peace. That where I am, there you may also be. Your turn. That where I am. This is the part he loved the most. One more time, louder. Set you free. In the world you will have trouble, but I'll leave you my peace. Of where I am, there you may also be.
Well, that was the closing song from the Jesus record, a great sing-along of That Where I Am, There You May Also Be. The Ragamuffins with Phil Keaggy, Mitch McVicker, Ashley Cleveland, with some lively percussion from Cobra Joe, and again, that was from the Lighthouse Tribute Concert back in 2002. And it's worth mentioning that that performance right there is the very first song that I ever uploaded to Ragamuffin Archive back on January 23rd, 2010. And you know, that's gonna just about wrap things up for this special edition of Ragamuffin Archive Revisited. And you know, even though it's been nearly 6 years since our interview took place, our sincere thanks to Mark Robertson for taking so much time with Chris Marchand and I to talk about Rich Mullins and the Jesus record. And for what it's worth, we released a good chunk of our interview back in 2017, and you can hear that on the Between the Songs podcast. And now you've got to hear a good bit more of our conversation. But you know, there is still nearly an hour of that interview that folks have never heard. And so Chris and I decided to release a much longer version of the interview you just heard in an all-new episode of Between the Songs podcast. And we've included links to that in the description of this video, so check it out. All right, well, I also wanted to take a quick moment to thank all of the Ragamuffins, Mark, Aaron, Jimmy, and of course, the late, great Rick Elias, for all of the work that you guys did on the Jesus record, and for keeping the legacy of Rich Mullins alive during the absolute hardest time, in the years, months, weeks, and even days following Rich's death. I know I speak for myself and a lot of other people when I say we love you guys and we really appreciate the music that you helped create, especially the Jesus record. All right, well, to close tonight, I'm going to play a recording by Rich Mullins. Now, I didn't want to play the demos or focus on anything like that. I really wanted to spotlight a Ragamuffin Band and the work that they did together after Rich's death. But, you know, Rich did make an appearance on the album, and I thought it might be a fitting way to end our show tonight. Near the beginning of the program, right before the band performed My Deliverer, you heard a bit of Nothing But the Blood, as performed by Rich Mullins on hammered dulcimer. And Mark mentioned during the interview that that's how they opened every concert of the Homeless Man tour, with that recording. And of course, fans of the Jesus record know that that little snippet of Nothing But the Blood was also how the album ended. After the final song, we hear the dulcimer fading in, and then gradually it fades back out, and that's how the record ends. And so I thought tonight that we'd end this special Jesus record tribute by playing Rich's full performance of Nothing But the Blood. But before we play it, I wanted to read something from Eric Townsend's Rich Mullins Timeline website. And this is something that Eric himself wrote about how that recording of Nothing But the Blood came to be included on the Jesus record. The live hammer dulcimer instrumental track nearly didn't make it onto the album. Producer Rick Elias had been looking for a good recording of the song that Rich performed on his final tour, but was unable to find one. The best copy that existed was from the Lufkin, Texas show, but Rich fumbled a bit on the start. Rick asked me to see if I could locate a better recording. I spent a good amount of time contacting numerous churches, tape traders, concert promoters, and others trying to locate a recording. At the very last minute, someone stepped forward with a good recording. That recording, taken from the Green Bay, Wisconsin show, was overnighted to Rick and just barely made it onto the record. So, from the concert recorded at Green Bay Community Church on August 10th, 1997, here is that full performance that was overnighted to Rick Elias of Rich Mullins, Mitch McVicker, the Kid Brothers, and This Train performing Nothing But the Blood, before transitioning into another song that's probably Rich's most iconic song ever. Now, only a few seconds of this performance made it onto the Jesus record, but this is the way they actually played it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Have a great week.
Now here is Rich Mullins.
void of an east. Our God is an
For the past 2 hours, you've been listening to a celebration of the 25th anniversary of the Jesus Record, a special presentation of Ragamuffin Archive Revisited. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to follow us on social media. It's Ragamuffin Archive on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can also reach me by email at ragamuffinarchive@gmail.com. And of course, you can always leave a comment on YouTube. The song you're hearing is Ted Yoder's version of Jesus, What a Friend for Sinners, from his album Hymns. You can find more of his music at tedyoder.com or on Bandcamp. Join us next time for another deep dive into the archive. I'm Joe Cook. Have a great week.